You set an alarm this morning. You probably hit snooze. Then you dragged yourself out of bed, made something to eat, checked your phone, and started mentally preparing for a day full of obligations. Work, errands, deadlines. A to-do list that never really ends. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, you probably thought, even just for a second, that there had to be a better way to live. That maybe humans were not built for this. That something, somewhere along the way, went wrong. You were right. But the answer is far stranger than you think. For 300,000 years, humans lived without schedules, without clocks, without bosses or bills or the low hum of fluorescent lights. And yet those humans, your ancestors, were not lying around doing nothing. They were not simple. They were not bored. They were living inside a daily structure so different from yours that if you were dropped into it, you would barely recognize it as human life. And if one of them were dropped into yours, they would think you had lost your mind. So what did they actually do all day? The first thing to understand is that ancient humans did not organize time the way you do. Anthropologist Marshall Solins spent decades studying hunter-gatherer societies and came to a conclusion that shocked the academic world. He called these people the original affluent society, not because they had more things, but because they worked far less. His research, published in the 1960s and later expanded in his landmark book, Stone Age Economics, suggested that hunter-gatherers spent somewhere between 3 and 5 hours a day on what we would call subsistence work, finding food, making tools, maintaining camp. The rest of the day was theirs, 3 to 5 hours. Then they were done. That number still surprises people. It surprises people because we have been told, in 1,000 quiet ways, that working hard is what humans are supposed to do. That busyness is virtue. That idleness is failure. But your ancestors never got that message. To them, once the day's needs were met, the work was over. Full stop. So what filled the rest of the time? A lot of it was talking. Sit with that for a moment. Not texting, not scrolling. Talking, face to face, in small groups, for hours. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, famous for his research on social group sizes and the evolution of language, has argued that early human language did not develop primarily to share information. It developed to gossip, to talk about other people, to build and maintain social bonds through shared stories, complaints, observations, and jokes. Your need to talk about other people, to dissect what someone said, to wonder what someone meant, is not a flaw in your character. It is the original function of human speech. Ancient humans talked. They talked constantly. They talked about who was trustworthy and who was not. They talked about what happened yesterday and what might happen tomorrow. They talked about the strange behavior of animals and the shifting moods of the sky. And in doing so, they held their entire social world together. The group was everything. The group was survival. And language was the thread that kept it from unraveling. But there was more than talk. They slept differently than you do. Psychiatrist Thomas Ware conducted a landmark experiment in the 1990s where he had participants live with only natural light for several weeks. What emerged was not a single 8-hour block of sleep. It was 2 distinct sleep periods separated by 1 to 2 hours of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night. Historian Roger Ekirch later found centuries of written evidence, diaries, medical texts, literature, all casually referencing this natural 2-part sleep as simply the way sleep worked. The phrase first sleep and second sleep appeared constantly, treated as common knowledge, until artificial lighting erased it entirely. Your frustration at waking up at 3 a.m. and lying there unable to fall back asleep is not a disorder. It may be your body remembering something ancient. In the gap between first and second sleep, people did not panic. They talked quietly. They prayed. They thought. They sometimes visited neighbors. They had sex. They lay in the dark and let their minds move through the day's events. That period of wakefulness was not insomnia. It was reflection. It was the original downtime, a window the modern world has sealed shut. During waking hours, ancient humans made things. This is important, not because the objects they made were impressive by modern standards, but because the act of making was constant. Tools were crafted from stone and bone. Baskets were woven. Clothing was sewn from hides. Fire had to be maintained. These were not joyless chores. Archaeologist Francesco D'Erico has studied human behavioral modernity in the archaeological record and found evidence of personal ornamentation, beads, pigments, decorative objects, dating back over 100,000 years. Ancient humans made things that had no survival value at all. Things that were just beautiful. Your desire to make something with your hands, to decorate your space, to create something that did not need to exist. That impulse is at least 100,000 years old. They played. Evidence of games and play appears across nearly every ancient culture studied by anthropologists. Children played, obviously, but adults played too. Wrestling, running, throwing, competitive games with stones and sticks. Play was not frivolous. It built physical coordination, sharpened reflexes, and reinforced social hierarchy in ways that felt safe because they were framed as games. When you feel the pull of competition, when you want to win at something that objectively does not matter, you are touching something very old. They told stories every evening around fire. This is not a metaphor or a guess. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years studying the Akung Sand people of the Kalahari and found a striking pattern in how conversation changed after dark. Daytime talk was mostly practical. Economic disputes, complaints, information sharing. Nighttime talk, by firelight, shifted almost entirely into storytelling. Myths, spirit encounters, tales of hunts gone wrong, and hunts that became legend. Wiesner's research, published in 2014, showed that firelight conversations lasted hours into the night and were the primary vehicle for transmitting values, beliefs, history, and imagination across generations. The campfire was the original cinema. The elder telling a story was the original filmmaker. And every person sitting in that circle was getting exactly what a good story gives you: a chance to live inside a different life without leaving your own. They rested. Not in the anxious, half-guilty way you might scroll through your phone on a Sunday afternoon. Real rest. The kind that feels earned because the body actually spent itself. Ancient humans were physically active, not because they went to the gym, but because movement was embedded in every hour of the day. Walking, crouching, carrying, climbing, gathering. And then, when the body was genuinely tired, they rested completely. No residual guilt, no to-do list running in the background. Just the particular piece of a body that has done what bodies were built to do. They watched the world. This sounds strange to say, but it is worth saying. Ancient humans spent enormous amounts of time simply paying attention to the sky, to animal behavior, to the patterns in water and wind and the behavior of certain plants at certain times of year. This was not passive. It was a form of expertise. The kind of environmental literacy that could tell you whether rain was coming 3 days before it arrived, or whether a particular animal trail had been used within the last hour. Neurologist David Strayer has studied what happens to human attention when people spend extended time in nature, and his research consistently shows a measurable restoration of cognitive function, clearer thinking, better problem solving, lower stress. After even a few days without screens and artificial stimulation. Your brain was built for that kind of wide, unhurried attention. The narrow, reactive, interrupt-driven attention that modern life demands is something it has never fully adapted to. And they grieved. They buried their dead with care. Evidence of ritual burial goes back at least 100,000 years, and possibly much further. Flowers placed on graves. Red ochre dusted onto bodies. Objects left with the dead. The belief that death required ceremony, that a life needed to be marked, acknowledged, sent off properly, is as ancient as almost anything we can find. Your need to mourn, to gather, to say words over a body and feel the weight of absence is not a cultural invention. It is a biological instruction written into you from a time so long ago that no language yet existed to describe it. This is what a day looked like. Work for a few hours, then stop. Talk for a long time. Make something. Play. Tell a story after dark. Sleep in 2 pieces with a quiet window in between. Pay attention to the living world around you. Grieve when something ends. There is no version of modern life that maps cleanly onto this. The modern world has solved problems your ancestors could not imagine surviving. But it has also replaced the daily structure that your nervous system was calibrated for with something far more relentless, far more abstract, and far more disconnected from the rhythms that kept humans sane for hundreds of thousands of years. You set an alarm this morning. You hit snooze. And somewhere underneath the to-do list and the deadlines and the fluorescent hum, a very old part of you is still waiting for the work to be done, so the real living can begin.